Hi, everyone. Welcome to Charcha 2020. First and foremost, we'd like to say thank you to everyone for being here today with us. Charcha is a platform for India's development sector to come together and engage on most pressing issues, which is especially important during, this time, naturally. Our panel today is called Moving from Inclusion to Empowerment, Building Financial Agency for Women in a Post-COVID-19 Environment. And so this panel will start now and run for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we have four very illustrious, experienced panelists and an equally illustrious and experienced moderator who will sort of facilitate that discussion for us. Just to introduce myself very briefly, my name is Angad. I'm part of Sattva Consulting. And let me just first allow me to introduce you to our four panelists today. So first, we have Mr. P. Satish. He's the executive director at Sadhan. He has 33 years of experience in the financial sector with RBI, with NABARD, and just in the microfinance sector. He's a director on the board of Mudra, a member of RBI's Financial Inclusion Advisory Committee, and he's on the SHG Bank Linkage Program, as the SHG Bank Linkage Program Strategic Advisory Board of NABARD. Next, we have Ms. Jayashree Vyas. She's the MD of Seva Bank, a bank which has more than 500,000 women clients. And during her tenure, she's taken some very major steps to introduce and operate an integrated microinsurance scheme. She's devised and implemented various housing finance schemes that have been availed by a number of women across 9 districts in Gujarat. We have Mr. Joe Bisio, who is the CEO of Dwara KGFS, and he's served senior roles with MFIs, banks, and financial institutions over a career that's been 16 years in the Indian microfinance market. Finally, we have Ms. Devika Mahadevan. She is the head of strategy and communication at Mandeshi, and she spent the last decade and a half working in the social sector on issues related to urban housing and infrastructure, as well as child rights and migration. She is also a member of the Niti Aayog Committee on Financial Inclusion. And finally, of course, we have our moderator, Ms. Aarti Mohan from Sattva. Aarti is a co-founder of Sattva. She's the head of our research, advisory, and programs practice here. And she has 12 years of experience in the sector with research, advisory, consulting, developing insights, and has curated and facilitated a number of panels and discussions at both national and international conferences. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Aarti, who will take us through the panel. Thank you so much again for being here, everyone.
Thank you, Angad, for opening very well. Thank you all. I know that the Charcha event has been somewhat of a, really coming together of so many different perspectives, organizations, speakers on various different topics. So very honored to be part of this, this event, and also leading a track where we have four more of us in the room, but I'm sure a lot more joining us as well. Very interested in this topic of how do we move from inclusion to empowerment? And we know for a fact that inclusion itself is quite hard one, and inclusion itself is struggling for women from a financial inclusion perspective. So the entire situation before COVID itself has been quite a bit of struggle. We know for a fact that women are among the most unbanked, and even with bank accounts created in their name through various different schemes, including Jandan and so on, the access and the agency that they've had to be able to be part of the bank and to be able to be part of the formal financial sector has been fairly low. And barriers are not just about distance or the digital literacy, while those have been a few foundational issues, there have been far more issues embedded and entrenched in the social fabric that of the societies they live in, the communities that they are a part of, and so on, which further act as barriers to this. I remember 2 years ago when we were hearing from a set of digital sakis that work in rural Madhya Pradesh, and who were imparting digital literacy to the rest of the rural women, and then bringing them into the fold to say, how do we look at backyard livelihoods, goatery and poultry and so on in these remote rural districts of Madhya Pradesh where these women were located. And we are talking here about women for the very first time who had someone even addressing them, talking about both digital and banking and being part of the financial fold. And I remember the trainers telling me that like her biggest barrier was the fact that she had to, beyond stepping out of the house, which where her family was quite opposed to in the beginning, she finally managed to convince them and went out of the home to conduct this financial and digital literacy training for the women. And she said that the first barrier that I faced was that I had a gungat that extended up till my my hands over here. So how do I even talk through and train and connect with the women in front of me with my gungat? And then slowly over the next 6 months to a year, after which when we went and met her, she was confident. She was everybody knew her in the village and came to her for informal financial advice. She did not have to put on the gunga during the period of training. She could have it behind her and be able to see the people that she is imparting this training to and the people that she's helping to come into the digital and financial fold. And she thinks this has been one of the most empowering things that has and programs that have happened in my life. And you realize that at so many levels there are these barriers that women face to be able to come into the financial fold, and COVID has only made it much worse. The number of women that were operating within the structure of a collective and were connected to markets either with their apparel or food or some of the other women collective enterprises have all been shut right now. And several of these are not even in the digital fold, do not have any cash flows, and while coming back will face quite a bit of a burden. We spoke over the last 1 month. We've had a chance to speak to several of these women-led enterprises, and have come to realize that 70% of their members don't have smartphones, don't have access to communication or learning methods. There is just very little resources left from both inclusion and with respect to them conducting their livelihoods. We know for a fact that while there have been a slew of schemes introduced by the government and quite a few addressing the immediate relief needs to then the rebuilding livelihood needs, but how they are able to percolate to the last mile, whether it is the ration shops not being open, not getting supplies, or the identity not existing or not working, to just being unable to step out of the house to receive these entitlements. There have been such a number of different teething issues, last mile problems that we have seen. So it brings us to the very critical question of what are we going to see post-COVID in an area that has thus far been quite niche and quite neglected, save for a bunch of very committed, passionate organizations working. On one hand, while we have the millions of women enrolled in their SHGs and running their enterprises, being part of the gig economy and largely being part of the informal economy, being affected. So today, with the eminent panelists that we have here, I'm hoping to learn how are we looking at the ground level challenges of what women are facing? Why do we need a gender lens overall? Because this is also coming up, right? Like, let us look at if you have to look at the larger public good, everybody is going through distress in so many different target communities. Why do we need a gender lens when we look at financial inclusion? So deconstructing the question of why do we need a gender lens or even a focus, and considering women are disproportionately affected. And then what do we need to keep in mind in terms of solutions, and how do we even craft those solutions which can remove those barriers bring in women from an unbanked to the banked environment, and bring them in from not receiving entitlements to receiving entitlements, but not stopping at that, but moving forward to see how they can be empowered in all of the livelihoods that were so important for their financial agency in the environments that they inhabit, which is also under threat. So with that, I'd love to start with Satish sir. You've been working and had a chance to look at all of the collectives in operation, and also been working closely with the policy environment. What has been some of your learnings of how COVID has impacted women from a financial inclusion empowerment perspective, and why is a gender lens important in the conversation we are having today?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this invitation to participate in this discussion. And if you look at from our side, from the entire microfinance sector, that is the pure MFIs which operate through the JLG mode, or even the self-help, the bigger self-help groups which are linked to the mainstream banks. In both these variants of microfinance, we have more than 95% as the women participation. So they were, while SSGs basically are looking at women collectives and factoring in the empowerment related issues and putting them in touch with the mainstream financial sector. In the joint liability group system, it was more in terms of what we can say a business decision by even the commercial minded institutions about the commitment of women to a better financial management and utilization of the financial resources from the microfinance sector. So that's the reason why the MFI sector has been more comfortable in dealing with women and women groups as far as the credit part is concerned. And to a large extent, they have been, there is an element of empowerment of women in the financial inclusion space. But at the same time, if you deeply go in, we can say the credit or the financial services which the woman brings to the household, she may or may not have the full rights over those financial resources, and she has to per se share with other family members, including the male family members also. But this has given a lot of confidence and lot of power and lot of respect to the women who are participating in the microfinance process in the SSGs as well as JLGs. And if you look at the impact of COVID on these collectives, our preliminary interaction and data shows that 70% of urban households and 57% of rural households have seen a complete loss of income. So when there is a loss of income in a household, either it is an urban household or a rural household, the responsibility for bringing the meal to the table, I would say, to put it in that way, is always falling on the women. So that's the real issue which we are seeing at the grassroots level. In the absence of any income from their livelihood activities, it has severely impacted the groups, SSGs as well as the JLGs, to take this, what we can say, to provide for the daily necessities of the household. And the alternative of any flow, our initial information shows that whatever we are talking in terms of support from the government in terms of the credit into their bank accounts or some sort of a support for a household essentials from the local governments and all. Just about 45 to 50% of the households who are the clients of the microfinance sector have received any type of such physical or financial assistance. So that means to some part there is some mitigation in terms of the support from the government, but for a larger part that is not there, and that's where though the institutions are hard pressed for their own financial services, many of them have stepped in to give some sort of a relief to their clients, families, and all, maybe supplying some household food supplies and all. But these I would say can go to some extent, because these are not the organized way in which the state, which has huge resources, can do. And whatever such support has been, the sector has been able to give to its client has been only to some extent. And also there has been a support in terms of guidance on health, hygiene, and keeping themselves safe in this period of stress. But as you say, we also have data, and I also agree that a large part of them do not have mobile phones with them, but still they're able to access the communication through the mobile of their sons or husbands. That's still happening. So fortunately, our MFIs report that during this period, they've been able to be in dialogue and conversation to at least 65% of their clientele. Though we would have wished that 100% of their clientele should have been contacted and messages should have gone to them, but at least 65% keeping in touch is a reasonably good figure in the context that this is a sector where there is a close regular interaction between the clients and the institutions. And that's one thing which we are really concerned, is that the entire our microfinance sector depends on community linkages and community action and group mechanism and all. So with the necessity for keeping the distancing and other things, how exactly this is going to work out post the lockdown is something which all of us in the sector will have to think about. And looking from a policy angle with regard to whatever the funds and other things which have to flow to enable these women to access more finances, there unfortunately more the institutions which are closer to the women, which work closely with the women, those which are cooperatives, such type of organizations, or those who are in form of an NGO. So these are the institutions which are starved of funding from the funding agencies. So the bigger institutions, those which are in the company form, they are able to access finances, but especially we have seen some small institutions which work with migrant workers, street vendors, and those who are doing small businesses both in rural as well as urban areas, and the institutions which cater to them. Those are the type of institutions which are starved of funding in such a situation, and the tendency has always been to the funds being attracted by bigger institutions and the clients who are more into commercial type of organization. So that's one thing which we from our side we are trying to impress upon policymakers, that the weaker and smaller institutions which are closer to the women collectives require more support in such a situation. So I will stop here so I can come in later after our other panelists also put in their views.
Got it. Thank you, Satish, sir. And I have a few follow-up questions which I'll come back to once the other panelists have spoken.
Yeah.
Devika, I just wanted to go over to you, and you've been heading quite a bit of the COVID impact efforts at Mandeshi, and been looking at how do we repurpose for the impact that COVID has had on the women collectives and the women-led enterprises. Can you tell us a little bit more about what has been happening, and also touch upon why a gender lens, particularly in the light of women-led enterprises and collectives, is critical?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Aarti, for inviting us, Mandeshi and me, to this panel. I thought I would start with something positive that Mandeshi has been able to do, which is like try and ensure that at least some women have liquidity at this time. So, Mandeshi is both a bank, women's bank, much like Seva, and a foundation that focuses on women's entrepreneurship and supporting women set up businesses and expand their businesses. And as Satish said, most of them have faced a huge lack of income because they have been unable to adapt at this time. But two examples of where we were able to kind of infuse liquidity. One is that women who we had trained in textiles, so maybe they had taken some fashion design or tailoring and things like that, women who might have been making bags, who might have been making garments, etc. We were able to very quickly, using our platform, to provide them online training on how to make masks. And so, and also at the time, able to extend them small loans for machinery. So, cloth cutting machinery, tailoring machinery, etc. And so very quickly, within about 2 or 3 weeks, we had about 300 women who had produced 300,000 masks. Of course, Mandeshi had helped with the access to capital, the training, safety and security instructions, also access to distribution networks. So like that platform that Satish is talking about, when women have those access to the collective. So in fact, many of the women have now employed other women to help them make these masks. And so that's one example of kind of very quickly responding and being able to adjust in this situation for a new demand. The other one, of course, is we've also been involved in doing relief work, and especially cooked food for migrants or fisher folk or people who are in very vulnerable situations. Again, we kind of mobilize, rather than setting up a community kitchen, we mobilize women who are running small businesses, dhaba businesses, home catering businesses. And then again, for them, extended small loans where they could then make these roti machines, or very small loans like 1,500, 2,000, or spice grinders, etc., so that they could produce cooked meals at scale. So these are two examples. We're also working on looking at these kind of shared economies and how we can promote that going ahead in the next phase of COVID. Also, in terms of our bank, we are in the midst right now of doing a survey about 4,000 women in their households to see how COVID has impacted them, and how we need to kind of re-engineer both the foundation's work and also what kind of products the bank will then create for them. And one of the things they found was that women who had been our customers for 2 and 3 cycles, who had been able to create some asset, even whether it was a goat, for example, a few goats, they were able to, and they were in, say, the vegetable business, perishable business, which of course was very negatively affected in terms of livelihood. They were able to quickly switch to, even if it was another non-perishable business or making papads or some other business, because they had access to the asset. So even the local kirana person in their village was able to extend them credit. Then at the same time, what Mandeshi Bank has done is that women who are running kirana stores, we have, because they are extending credit to people at wholesalers, they are acting as wholesalers and extending credit. They also need liquidity now to buy raw materials. So we as a bank are very actively looking for customers who need these kinds of credit lines. So yeah, those are the 2 or 3 things that we have done. In terms of the need to focus on gender, I think that we will have a gender neutral approach, then of course, as we find, it's not just about maybe 80% of women have access to a bank account now in our country, but something like 30% of women are actually using these accounts. So a gender neutral approach to access then doesn't really look at control of finance, as you're saying. So it's, you know, crucial to make sure that, and it's not just a one-time thing that you give access and then that's it. So you have to constantly be making interventions. And one of our suggestions, in fact, is that even if you look at Jan Dhan, there's 10,000 rupees is allowed as overdraft facility. So perhaps this is a good time to kind of create the awareness and maybe set some targets for banks to be able to extend that overdraft facility to people who can then have some more liquidity. And perhaps if one suggestion is like, if you are a woman entrepreneur and you need to then, of course, all your capital has been extinguished, where perhaps your savings has been extinguished, increase that credit line to maybe 35,000 rupees, or create a Udyogini credit card or something like that, so that women then have access to whether it's a machine, whether it's working capital, something like a credit line for them as well. So which will then ensure that women can continue having their livelihoods, because I mean, they are still, their families are still dependent on them, as Satish said, whether they are controlling the money or some other member of the family also has control of their money, but the family is very much dependent on this liquidity and on this income coming in. So yeah.
Thanks, Devika. And quite intrigued by the way you've structured the liquidity, both directly and indirectly, to funnel to the women-led enterprises. So I'm definitely going to come back to you to get more details on that as we go through the, the design of what we can do in the post-COVID scenario. Just one question before I go over to the next panelist is, this repurposing is interesting, right? Like it's short term, while they are unable to continue their earlier profession, you've been able to repurpose them to serve to some of the COVID, essential material or equipment that has to be done. How long do you think that this is going to sustain, and how much has it helped them come back on their feet, the whole repurposed livelihoods piece?
So actually, in terms of, if you look specifically at masks, I mean, the demand for that is only going to grow. So we are expecting actually that they're right now about 300, maybe it'll be about 500 women producing 1 million masks within the next 6 months. Also, I think there will be a lot more doorstep delivery that is going to be required. So training women who might have been running small kirana shops or doing in the vegetable business or something, to be able to kind of, try and create a supply chain, or try and create a backward and forward chain where you buy from small, which is very similar to what Seva does in terms of its Rudy model, where you buy from small and marginal women farmers, and then you train women to sort, pack, grade, and deliver safely. So trying to create new models over there. I mean, even, we're finding in Mantaluka, where we're headquartered, so many migrants have come back home. They are not all planning to go back to the city. Many of them do not want to stay. So what are all the new businesses, or what are the new economic and livelihood opportunities that will be created for them is one. And second, like there's a larger market now, even within, the rural economy. So that is something that we've been thinking about.
Right. Thank you so much, Devika. With that, going over to Jayashree Ben, you've been working with women through the whole process of collectivizing them, and then that has been serving to bring them together for economic activities, negotiate together, to then be integrated to markets, and then be able to also stay together for the whole social fabric being strengthened, and that is also how it operates. So we know that in this right now during the lockdown, the collectives coming together itself is an issue. And therefore, I would love to know what challenges you see in the construct of the collective approach is going to be so central to recovering from COVID, Jayashree Ben. And two, as the MD of Seva Bank, you've been someone who's probably been the only lender to these rural women collectives who've slipped through the cracks of several other, government or policy or some of the other instruments that are available. So what are the challenges you are seeing with them accessing finance, accessing DBTs, and accessing whatever financial elements are necessary for their survival and their rebuilding going forward? If you could touch upon these 2 points.
Yeah, as we have been working with both urban as well as rural women. So far as COVID is concerned, I think rural women are not that much affected as much as the urban women. So the first thing, and this is the time when it is a time for crop agriculture and crop and other things. So first things which they were SHGs or they were cooperatives, they were asking that we need credit for our agriculture activities. So that was the first thing, and then this was the time when we had to give it, and fortunately we have been using all these digital devices and others with. So, and there are some, and because we are a bank, we were also able to move from one place to other place. So we have so many cars and other things. So what we did was that immediately what we started doing was that providing them credit at a comparatively lower rate of interest. This time we decided that we will not have that much. So that was the first thing which we did. Second was the milk. And this is also that Amul and many were linked with Amul also, but they were not, some of them were not also linked with that. So in that case is also they are needing some kind of feed and other things. So that for that also we started giving them loans. And construction workers, of course, for them it was a cooperative there and they were working there. But there it was because their work was not done, not happening. So that was not possible. But I think the best thing which we saw was both in urban as well as in the rural area was that saving, because from beginning we were starting talking about importance of saving, and women as women are there always wanting to save, and this is something which we had helped them to do it. So and thanks to this rupee card and other things, so they had their rupee cards and they had their saving in their accounts. So they were able, just showing the rupee card, and they were even at the lockdown, and even there was a curfew, those women were able to come out of their homes and they were able to get their savings with themselves. Even urban rural women also were able to withdraw some money. So that was the first thing. The second thing also was that there were some women who had fixed deposits with them. So they also started borrowing on fixed deposits, so and at a very low rate of interest. I think this was something which was very helpful. But I wanted to say something else also. These women, we have seen that because they are in informal sector, they don't have regular income, and they are going from one crisis to other crisis to other crisis. We have seen that they are more brave, and they have learned how to deal with crisis. So what we have been seeing is that and we are hoping that this time also this is one more crisis for them. So we are sure that they will come out of this also very fast. So this is what we have been seeing. I'll just give you one example. Once we had some workshop with women where we're just talking about how do you deal with your crisis, and all those women were talking about how they're dealing with crisis, and there were 30% women who said we ourselves were we even didn't understand why it is why they are so strong. They say that we were in such a bad situation, so that that our husbands were almost saying that I want to commit suicide. And that was the time when we told them that no, we are here and we will be able to come out of this. So so we are also hopeful that this time also they will be able to come out of that. But hopefully they will not have much of this. As she said, we also had the same thing. We had so many home-based workers, and there was a need for masks, but they didn't have material. Even the contractors who were giving, they were not giving material to them. So at that time we provide them working capital loans. Fortunately, they had their own machines with them, so that was not a problem. And I mean, whoever this was, the contractor was also giving them that how it is to be made. So that was also helpful to them. What we are seeing is that at present they are somehow or other dealing with this, but immediately after opening of this lockdown, we are seeing that we will, and we are, what we are doing is that we, of course we are not able to go to their homes at present, but we are by phone we have been asking lots of questions to them that what is your what will you do after this is done. So then in these cases what we are seeing is they are saying that of course to expand their own business, but they are also thinking that, if they can get some other kind of innovative new items, then they would also be like to do this. So we are, first thing is that we are ready to give them, I mean, we'll of course see that, how much is the need, and then we will start lending immediately through our digital applications. The second thing which we are also seeing is that with all said and done, their savings and other things, they might have borrowed from somewhere else. And in that cases, we will also give them a loan. So at least, they must have borrowed at a very high rate of interest. So at least, they will save their whatever interest they are paying. But financial inclusion, as you're saying, and empowerment. So this will only be possible if we are making a meaningful and sustainable financial inclusion. And what it is only the combination of integrated financial services along with financial literacy and other kind of literacy. So what and for entrepreneurs, of course, they also need some other kind of training also. So this is what, I mean, over a period of time we have learned all these things, and these has really helped them, like credit. Whenever credit is given to them, it's always an empowerment, because either they are buying an asset. So when they are buying an asset, that is not only that it is of course their own in her own name, but whatever business they have been doing, we are seeing that whenever this kind of an equipment is given to them, of course it is helping them to increase their productivity and income, but it is also helping them to reduce their drudgery. So which is, I would say, this is also a kind of an empowerment for them. That, for example, we have carpenters, many women carpenters there. Only in Ahmedabad we are seeing women carpenters, and these carpenters were making all things manually, and for whole day they would make two chairs or three chairs, and once they had a cutting machine, they were able to make five or more such. Not only that, but it was not done manually, it was done by. So so this kind of, so credit, I mean, credit to, I can give hundreds and hundreds of these kinds of examples where it is empowered. But saving is also an empowering process, because whenever they have saving, first thing is that it gives them self-confidence, but it also gives them help for future. And particularly when they are using it with goals, that for marriage of children, or for education of children, or even for festival, when they have goal setting. So some kind of planning is also helping them. So I mean, I think this is something, this will be an opportunity for us. What we are seeing is that, though I'm saying that we are digitized and everything, but many women are still not yet used it. And here, I think this will be an opportunity for us, that we will tell them that how, or other women will tell them that how, when they were using these digital applications, how facilitating them, if it was facilitating them. So this is something which I think in next strategy we have. One is that everyone, 100% of women should use digital applications. The second thing is that try to understand what are their needs, and maybe they might be in need of expanding more and more. So we will be able to help them in providing credit to them, and we'll bring more and more other women also, so that those who are not with us, we'll also try to bring them more and more. So this is just the beginning.
Thank you, Jayashree Ben. An interesting perspective there on how this could be an opportunity to bring more women into the fold of the Seva Bank, services. Would love to pick cue from what you said about access to digital and go over to Joby. While it is being seen as an opportunity because everything is by default digital, and it's therefore can solve for some of the mobility constraints that have also been impeding women from pursuing economic opportunities in a little bit of a distance from home. And in the post-COVID scenario, there are predictions of more decentralized at-home work and increased appetite for digital, therefore. But it's also the other part of the story is digital adoption itself has been very difficult and achieved with difficulty, right? Whether it's a cell phone ownership or literacy, or both digital products and digital financial products not even being designed keeping in mind women. So I would love to understand how you see this digital as having an impact due to COVID on the financial inclusion of women.
I would not agree much with you about this, that, that women love any kind of technology. That is our experience since beginning. The only thing is, of course, we have to give them hand-holding support. For example, I'll just tell you one. Say, for example, when we had RuPay cards, and they were withdrawing money, and Ilaban said that no, they are just withdrawing and withdrawing. Can you have some kind of machines or whatever that they can also have they put deposit in them, so deposit machines. And we had deposit, this started deposit machine. We were wondering that whether women will deposit their money in that machine or not, and we had put our cashier also there. And since, immediately after some days, we saw that there was a longer queue on machine than on the cashier. And we asked that why. So first thing they said that, we are happy that we have learned this. Second thing, they said that it saves our time. And third thing also, they said that, there was of course passport printing machine there. So they said that we can go to passport machine and get it printed. So we know that our money has been deposited in this account. And so the first thing was that, they were getting more and more self-confidence. Second was that they were saving their time. And the third thing was that, they feel that this is more secure. So, and it is not that, we have to train everybody. Once we train one woman, they are training to others. When you have women messengers, they are thinking that they are always very helpful. So they are sitting at the machine and they are always, giving some mother help to them. So this is something, that, so it is kind of a change. And once one person is taking, it's other. So, and I think I always feel that, women are most smarter than others.
Thank you. It's quite an optimistic note as well. And you're very right about the fact that women are very critical agents in bringing in women from the communities, rural and urban, into the fold of financial inclusion. So would love to touch upon that when we go over to the questions. With that, would love to go over to Joby for your experience and your perspective on this.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, Sattva, for inviting into this Charcha discussion. Like at Dwara, like the erstwhile IFMR effort, like we are connected with a little over 1.2 million households across 6 states, working in almost like 50 odd districts. But we are kind of more like in village level organization. We are kind of more in remote rural areas. So we work around in almost like 10,000 odd villages. So I would talk a little bit about the way that I have seen the whole transformation of inclusion to empowerment, and also how the digital is kind of really helping them, as well as to kind of really see what sort of an adaptation is happening at their level as well as at the institutional level. Hope you're able to kind of hear.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, the empowerment is about your freedom to take decisions, and a little bit about your kind of how you are able to kind of make opinion, and your ability to kind of kind of own assets. So these are kind of very critical kind of characteristics of how do you measure empowerment. And I've seen the way that, like, we happen to do a customer engagement survey just before the COVID started. And during the COVID, we reached out to almost like 4.6 lakh customers, women, using our newly developed digital platform. So one of our wealth manager, we pause ourselves as kind of a wealth manager for the rural women. And then our wealth managers were kind of talking to these women to kind of know how COVID has kind of really affected them. So I'll give you a little bit of the kind of insights that we earned from the earlier survey, where women, we asked them, like, kind of how do you take decisions in taking loan? So they said like, yeah, we consult with our husbands, but we decide, you know. And then they said, like, then we asked whom else you discussed, like, you know. So they, you know, they said we inform our husbands, we consult with them. But if an advice is required, we consult with our elder daughter who's married off, and, you know, somebody who's educated. So we take all those consultations, but end of the day, it's my, you know, decision. And state to state, we saw some difference. Like, we saw people, women from Karnataka, depending more on their fellow group members than the elder daughters. They were saying, like, if you have a doubt whether this is a good institution, whether this is a good product, we ask our members, because our group has been working for long and we trust them. So I would say that that's been, you know, one indicator of how empowerment really has happened. And another, what we saw during the COVID, like, we started a kind of a subscription model of investment product for our customers, like, where they can invest in digital gold. They can buy, you know, kind of hospi cash, which is a kind of an insurance against income loss. They can invest in mutual funds. So we weren't very sure during this whole lockdown. Akshay Tritiya came, and then, you know, jewelry shops are all closed, and it's a kind of an auspicious occasion. Many women wanted to kind of really buy gold. And you know, the general feedback within our own company when we discussed is that who want to invest in gold, because they're all figuring out how to live. And then, you know, we don't want to kind of go back to them asking whether they want to kind of really invest. But then we took a chance. We said, like, yeah, what are we kind of going to lose? Let's ask them. You know, kind of, we came up with a special product on that day. If you want to buy gold worth of 500 rupees and, you know, kind of 250 rupees, we can give you an opportunity that you can buy, but you can pay in another 25 days. And you would be surprised, like, close to 2,000 women actually chose to buy. And they said it's important for us, and we just want to kind of, as a token, we want to kind of really buy. And this is not what we used to kind of hear earlier. I've been in this sector for the past 15 years. As and when we, you know, kind of show a new product to them, what we kind of typically hear is that, no, we want to go home, we want to discuss, we want to kind of see whether our husbands agree to this. And it takes a longer time for them to kind of come back whether they will buy this product or not. Now I can see that it's kind of a lot more faster. They say, no, it sounds good. Like, you know, kind of, we can buy. And another aspect that we saw from the survey is that, you know, this is pre-COVID, but then what they said is that, what's their aspirations and what is their number one priority. The number one clear priority for them is education of their children. And they see that today they have an opinion on that. You know, they can decide their children will go to an English medium school, or, you know, kind of, because so I do not know whether the social freedom leads to economic freedom or economic freedom leads to social freedom. But I want to kind of believe that once you have access to finance, and it beginning to, I mean, the equations at home changes, right? And if your husband sees and your family sees that you are able to kind of get a loan and then able to send your child for a better education, and you're able to kind of see that your dream to kind of have a roof on your you know, kind of top someday, and if this lady is kind of going, you know, able to go out and get a home loan, definitely the equations change. There are some, you know, fundamental things in our country which needs change. Like, they don't have the, what we saw in our own survey also, they don't have the ownership of the lands. Clearly it's in the names of husbands and in-laws and all those kind of things. But therefore we saw their aspirations is to kind of, they want to own their shop. The immediate next aspiration is to own a vehicle, a two-wheeler that gives them lots of freedom to kind of run their business. So I've seen this the way that, if you ask me, you know, the empowerment path has been happening, and a lot of them today exercise that. And using digital is another way. Like, I've seen lots of adaptation by women. Like, in our own survey, what we saw is that all our households, like, all, you know, 1 million plus has a home phone, and 30% has own phone. Almost 18% has access to kind of WhatsApp and, you know, kind of a touch phone. And you know, kind of they are quickly, kind of learning things. Like during COVID, they were waiting for a little bit to know what is the moratorium terms are, whether it is an interest waiver and things like that. And all the soon they realized it's only a deferment, it's not a waiver. And people who had money, they want to repay. And they themselves kind of came around models to kind of say, in a group of 10, if one lady has a digital phone, the seven paid to that lady, and then she used her kind of digital handle to kind of make payment to us. And women talking to their son or daughter who is employed or kind of educated there, asking them to kind of make a payment. So see, I'm saying, kind of there is this whole intent to always learn and adapt. And they are very quick to turn, kind of a crisis to an opportunity. As even Devika was saying, like one opportunity that we saw is that we have thousands of women who were in tailoring. And this was their biggest opportunity. This is the festival opportunity, school opening, uniforms were their whole stitching option. Now that's not happening, right? No, there is no festivals, there is no holidays, people are not buying any clothes, there's no weddings, and school opening, there's uncertainty. So nobody's buying uniforms. So there was a kind of big uncertainty for them. And the new opportunity is that the face mask. And then we had transportation problems earlier. And then, kind of immediately the team came around with very hyper local markets. Like, kind of there are people in the local geography itself wanting to buy. So we were, as a part of War Room, for the COVID, we were tracking very closely about the red zones and orange zones and the green zones, and then the containment zones, and where is the the transportation is opening up. And so it's kind of village to village. It's not about, the major supply chain seems to have broken, but in that middle of that, there are certain things working. So we saw, in that survey, when we talked, they said, yeah, so we are willing to quickly learn this, but can you see us market? Kind of, we want to kind of sell this. And we saw lots of them, like it's about talking to the local geography there. And thankfully, post office was working. So within the state, we were able to kind of do the transportation. It's all about a kind of, we quickly came up with a mini e-commerce platform, wherein each branch will just post the demand, and they say we have got 500 women willing to stitch. And then using them all the videos, kind of using the medical standard and local use and single use and multiple use, all sorts of complications. But then, over the time, people came to know that this is going to be another wearable you should be kind of having in your regular life. So you need to kind of stitch as much as you want, but then the materials are an issue. So it's all about then asking who has the material and can we kind of transport there. And then we saw about lots of our customers are agricultural customers. So the bigger markets fail, the mandis fail. But then how can we kind of enable them to kind of, but people, the city needs it. So how could we connect the big baskets and all those guys, because their own procurement arms have failed. But then we knew the farmers where the commodities were there. So I was just saying, kind of the way people quickly come up, digital was not their regular life. But then I could see that, and we also saw like there was a lot of artisans, women who were kind of weaving saris and all that. So just we quickly started an Insta page called Dwara KGFS Artisans. And then we started posting, kind of their own, camera quality was not great, but then they kind of managed some cameras locally and posted the saris and the whole this thing. And they are now up there in our page. And then we are using our own networks to kind of see whether someone can really buy that. So I would say that, kind of, should there be a gender angle? I'm not so sure, but then I am seeing it as kind of today, because of this whole microfinance movement and the group, kind of ability which they have, their own self-confidence is very high. It's all about, you are not in your kitchen now. You have another women to kind of talk. Many microfinance field officers and wealth managers coming and training you many things. And if there's a mobile phone at home, there's a lot of training materials we are able to kind of push to them. Like the way they are learning now, kind of how to stitch a face mask, kind of it's over a YouTube video. So I'm seeing it is kind of really, kind of this lot of adaptation happening from their side. And then we also did a little bit about, the perception about the whole health hazard during COVID. Some of our women were losing business, right? Because they are the women who does the retail sales of vegetables, fruits, fish, all on the wayside and, kind of small shops. And unlike us who are in the organized sector, nobody was giving them an SOP about how to take care of themselves. There isn't any protocol that is kind of accessible to them. So we saw them, they are still sitting without a face mask and, kind of not take, and that's, exposing themselves into a certain health hazard. And then, the buyers are also kind of afraid. So then under the CSR effort, like we thought we will give them a kit with a, vernacular language kind of a pamphlet, which they can use to kind of safeguard themselves. And now we are soon working to kind of, because another risk is that they all used to kind of deal in cash. People used to pay them in cash. Now there is all worry about currencies, right? And people don't want to kind of exchange currencies. But we have huge digital capability to kind of enable them if they can receive cash using QR code. It's as simple as to kind of build a simple QR code, kind of a thing on their, shop, so that people can actually pay to them, which will really get them back to business, and they are empowered. And, and there is a lot more preference for small shops now, unlike the larger supermarkets, right? It looks to be, it's more safer there, because the guy in the shop, he goes and pick the goods. And we are seeing a renewed interest for the local kirana shops to kind of really build business, and we are helping them to kind of build portfolios and, SKUs, and, kind of how can they kind of, because that's the place where people can go. Now people can't travel, and they want to kind of really see. So I would say it's kind of more positive, this thing. Of course, the challenges are there, and, but I can't see that women are still very hopeful and wanting to kind of really take this opportunity in their favor.
Thanks, Joby. Some fantastic insights there about the hyperlocal models and how digital at every point has been, in some way repurposed, made to work, activated. So very nice to hear about a lot of the newer models at a hyperlocal level coming up that you spoke about. As I had a bunch of questions to all of you, and there are questions streaming in from the audience as well. So I'll just combine it and take some of them one by one. Would love to go around the room to understand, in lending to women and in looking at financial services delivery, financial inclusion for women, the collective has been a very central anchor point. Women collective, borrowing or coming together as an SFG, and in those meetings making those decisions, the JLGs, several things have been anchored around them coming together, which is going to be hard going forward and harder to achieve. We'd love to get experiences and insights from all of you on how are we going to repurpose this model of the collective coming together itself that financial inclusion of women has been anchored on. Devika, would you like to go first?
Well, so we have been doing a lot of, as a lot of people were talking about how women don't have access to smartphones. So we have found that if you look at women entrepreneurs, there is a larger percentage of women who would have smartphones. So I think we have about 50% of women who are entrepreneurs with us who have smartphones, 50% do not. So, that's still a significant number. So we have been doing a lot of trainings using voice messages actually, and sending information on voice messages. We have a community radio right now that reaches out to about 100,000 people in our taluka. So that has been doing a lot of messaging around, even like Joby was saying, when you restart your beauty parlor business, when you restart your dhaba business, what is the social distancing that you need to maintain? How do you do digital payments? How do you make sure your customers feel safe to come to you? So there's lots of that training also happening over platforms like this, but also over the phone, also through voice messages. We are developing these 2-minute messages that go out for 30 days. Every day you get a 2-minute message about something related to digital marketing, or you get something related to digital banking. So there is a lot of interest and response that we see from women, that they are very interested in receiving these trainings. In terms of like actually coming together, I mean, I think that you can still have a group of 5 people come together as long as that they do maintain some social distancing. So it's not that you can't come together at all after this, but you'll have to obviously maintain your levels of safety and security. But perhaps they will do more over digital platforms. But I don't see how you can kind of move away from the JLG model entirely to an individual model just because of COVID. You just have to make sure that you're being safer.
Got it. Any thoughts from Joby and Jayshree on that?
Yeah, so our sense is that the group has a lot of positives, and in some way they have to kind of women seem to kind of see a lot of value in that. It's for them, kind of. I think the first option for them, there is someone whom they can talk and kind of beyond their family, kind of over a period of years, they've kind of tend to build a lot of confidence about their own businesses. Kind of they get their business opportunities and. There's a lot of those kind of, I mean, I would say it's almost like for businesses is about this whole your colleagues whom you kind of network for ideas and kind of confidence. You always have those kind of a network that you keep. And for the women, the solidarity group over there is kind of their go-to place, and we see a big value there. And we are experimenting about how can we create virtual groups if the social distancing becomes really really difficult. The so-called conference calls which were only happening in the offices, now our wealth manager is taking 5 people on a call, and the others can listen what the other lady is saying and things like that and all. And then also kind of our own staff has the smartphones, and then they can have the kind of video call if the central office, we have a call verification happening with the customers and all that, but not everybody was having the smartphone. So now we are thinking about, can the smartphone that my relationship manager has can be shared for all the 5 in some sense to kind of. But what we see as a change which will happen is that a lot of transactions may kind of more pivot into digital transactions. So to kind of make a repayment or to kind of pay up your subscription amount for your wealth management plan, or to pay up your insurance premium, all of that, what we are thinking is that empowering the local digital touch points, like go to the kirana where you can go to buy the provisions, and if that guy has a mobile, most likely they have, or the mobile top up shop where you can regularly go to kind of top up, and if you can make your payments there. So I would see that everything used to kind of happen in the group now will take a shape of a lot more day-to-day transactions can move into digital. But this whole group meetings will kind of more develop and take shape as kind of business development meetings and the new product launches. The MFI has a new product to be discussed, and that's where it will be kind of meaningful. There will be a lot more training, and now that the whole digital markets itself will be very huge for them, kind of to sell their own produce and kind of their own services, and kind of all of that. I would see is that, I mean, even another opportunity that I also see is that kind of in our own survey, women were also listening to that, kind of even education. They don't know how schools will open up, and maybe in the cities and all, it's easy to say online classes. But mothers in rural areas are all worried about, kind of government has no ability to kind of start, kind of online classes. These kids don't have any phones. Government schools don't have that kind of, so, there are worries about whether they will lose a year if the schools don't open up. So we are thinking about, can we kind of have sort of a online classes, because there's a one phone in that particular group can make the whole difference. And it can be kind of, it can transform as like maybe our own branches can turn to be kind of evening classes, tuition classes for, we can centrally broadcast classes, and our branches they can use to kind of come. So I'm just saying is that, kind of the group aspect of that will continue in various formats, and we are seeing that collective thinking is happening up there on newer challenges and newer issues. but I may see a lot of transactions may kind of move into digital, and that makes more sense at this point in time.
Got it. Interesting. Another question that came up also was about
can I just
women. Sorry, Jayshree, but just
Yeah.
wanted to say that one of the other questions was also the ownership of smartphones among women has been quite low. So therefore, how do you then, how are we going to deliver? So some of the points that Devika and Joby brought up about the last mile contact being possibly an enabler with a smartphone for the rest of the community, but then there's still the problem of how do those 5 people then meet this person with social distancing at the last mile has to be solved, and also voice instead of communication that requires a smartphone, etc. Some of the things that just came up. So Jeshban, if you could also touch upon the smartphone aspect in addition to the collective aspect, that'll be great. Jayashree Ben?
Now even the price of smartphones are also very, it's not that very expensive. So one thing which we have done is that we have given them a loan for buying this, and also at a lower rate of interest. So many of them have been buying this. The other, of course, the others are not bought it. But, I was just going to give you example that only today, we have our board, of course, board members, but they are also vegetable vendors and all those rural women and others. And yet today we had a board meeting, and I was surprised that, will they come on Zoom or what will happen? And of course, everybody did not have it, but somebody brought it from somebody else but they tried to do it. Of course, how to, mute and not mute, and those kinds of things were happening. So it was a long meeting, but we saw that, they were trying. Many of them were using their, grandson or granddaughter help and other things. But so, once it will come, I think they will try to learn this. And hopefully, the expenses will also be lesser. The second thing which I wanted to say was that, during this period, we had, we had our branches were open. And so many women wanted to come and withdraw and whatever other things. So what we saw was that, we were also not sure that will always when we will keep that social distancing and other things. But if you see, everyone knows it, and it was so much discipline without even telling us that be disciplined. So they have started understanding that, what is required, and then they are, in that way they become disciplined and they do it. So I'm they will find some way.
Got it. Thanks, Jayashree Ben. Just going over to Satish sir, bunch of questions that have come up around the urgency of ensuring the PMJDY, and also in the light of the announcements made, day before yesterday, where the focus on rebuilding livelihoods and self-reliance, and therefore looking at all of those the schemes and opportunities unlocked at a Government of India level, reaching women at the last mile. What are some of those policy level priorities that need to be urgently pursued in the light of ensuring the gender aspect in financial inclusion?
Basically now when the PMJDY accounts were being opened all across, the MFI sector also tried to ensure that all their women clients get to open these bank accounts. And even from our field level interaction, we used to find that. But now if some data shows that because of the absence of PMJDY accounts, this government's financial assistance has not been able to reach. One thing is that it's necessary for the government again to depend on the microfinance sector and also the SHG women to ensure that if at all they, but this I think immediately all our institutions will be able to do because all of them have ensured that some sort of a bank account they are able to get, because now most of the loan proceeds are being credited to the bank account. So only thing is that the technicality is that they have to make it like any other PMJDY account. And we also, when this announcement came from the Ministry of Finance, we specifically said that you include, without mentioning a specific PMJDY type of account, you first try to get the women's accounts in all types of banks, cooperative banks, regional rural banks, small finance banks, and even cooperative societies, so that at least you get a larger catchment area for your women's bank accounts, so that this transfer of financial benefits can take place. And of course, there may be, because of in this exercise, there may be an addition of a certain percentage of women who do not exactly fall into the income levels and limits. But I think we should not mind a certain percentage getting that sort of a benefit, where we are able to expand our reach to the 95% of the women account holders. So we should not restrict it to certain type of account and certain type of mainstream banking institutions, and make use of this entire financial inclusion infrastructure created in the SHGs and in the MFIs and in the cooperatives and all, so that a larger percentage of all these benefits, whenever the government wants to transfer, it can reach over to them. And also, like we have many women cooperatives, like institutions like Seva Bank is there, Mandeshi is there, Annapurna is there in Pune and all. So these are the type of institutions, probably they should get more of funding from the bulk lenders and institutions like SIDBI, NABARD and Mudra, so that they can expand their activities and bring in more number of women borrowers into their fold. So this is one urgent need we'll have to look at, because unless we look at small local level institutions, we will not be able to take this services to the poorest of the women in such a time of crisis.
Agreed. So are there specific PMJDY bottlenecks we need to solve for? Because with the essential DBTs, PMJDY is still going to be very critical to funnel those into women, Satish sir. So do you think there are any bottlenecks that have now become even more urgent to solve?
No, main bottlenecks what we have come to here is that when the accounts after opening, they have not been operated, they have become inoperative, and it becomes a little lot difficult to make such accounts inoperative, and probably there has to be some decision at RBI level to say that in case of PMJDA account, this sort of a clause should not be there of accounts becoming inoperative. So that's I think the main thing, because that's one thing which we got reports from the field also, is that the women got some message saying that some money has been credited to their PMJDY account, but when they went to their bank branch, they said that you can't operate your bank account. So I think these are the things which probably, because even well-educated people operate only one bank account on a regular basis. If you have 4 accounts, I think there will be 2-3 accounts where, but probably there is some checks transaction or something like that. That account is. Account doesn't become inoperative, but in the case of a poor woman, that At a certain point of time, she must have withdrawn some money, and after that, she might not have used that account for quite some time, because in many women group meetings, when I used to ask about their bank account, almost 95% used to say that they have a bank account, and almost all of them, they said they had a RuPay card also. But when we asked that how many of you have gone to the bank branch and used this card, then that percentage was only 10% or less. So I think that part regarding reoperationalizing the PMJDO accounts is something which all banks have to do that. And if there is some regulatory approval required, I think RBI should take care of that.
Absolutely. Considering 150 million of those women are from the economically disempowered segment.
Yeah.
So that's a large chunk to be facing the kind of problems that you talked about, Satish sir.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that has emerged in the light of digital being default in the going forward is also that not just, I mean, thus far the conversation has been around digital financial literacy. And in the post-COVID world, there seems to be an agreement that it's literacy will only take you so far. Is digital fluency and financial fluency, like in utilizing the digital medium, are you very conversant? And in corollary, in being able to operate your finances, are you fluent? What are the priorities, particularly for rural women, that we have to solve for in this aims of achieving digital and financial fluency? Would love for Devika, Joby, and Jayashree Ben to come in here. 3 priorities, or are there 3 top action points to ensure that rural women are both digitally fluent and financially fluent?
I'll just, Aarti, when you were talking about the kind of impediments that Mr. Satish was elaborating, I was thinking about this lady, in fact, who I was in touch with a little while ago. Her name is Jaivanti Ben, and she's in a tribal hamlet in Nashik. And when we had called her, she was walking around with a postman in her village who was going from door to door and handing out 500 rupees cash to the women, because most of them did not have bank accounts. So I was just thinking that how, when one really wants to put one's mind to it, you can make sure that 500 rupees, even though it is a very small amount, it goes right up to the doorstep of women at the last mile. So I feel like really the postal banking, the postal bank that was discussed, and I don't know where it is right now, but I think that would be a very important tool to really reach the last mile, like in these tribal hamlets where Jaivanti stays. The second thing I want to just reiterate again is, of course, as long as these regulatory challenges are solved for in terms of inoperative accounts, there is 10,000 rupee overdraft facility associated with every Jan Dhan account. I think the percentage usage is less than 1%. And so this would provide a great deal of support. I think there are ways to kind of also link women business owners here, and perhaps if you run a small business or you have 50% of women in your business, so maybe your wife is also registered, or and it of course has to be formalized. Again, extend that, provide a credit facility. Mandeshi Bank does have a financial product, which is a credit facility where we offer street vendors. I think it's up to about 40,000 rupees over 3 years, where they can keep, withdrawing. It's a credit line basically. And this, in fact, we have found, we did a study, improves from the customer perspective, improves their profitability as compared to JLG. This is already part of the Jan Dhan account. So, I mean, to activate that, I think will really be beneficial. In terms of kind of digital and financial fluency, I think, at least from the perspective of Mandeshi, the financial literacy that we trainings that we do are quite in depth. So I think that is really financial fluency. It's not just very basic. And again, with digital fluency, because we work with entrepreneurs, it's not just about digital banking, but how do you use digital platforms to market, to stay in touch with your customers, to brand yourself, etc. There are many platforms nowadays that are available for free. So it's really about that kind of training. And as Jayashree Ben said, I mean, once the uptake is very quick, and there's this kind of rapid uptake. So I find value in it. The idea is like you have to find value in it. It has to work for you. So once it works for me, then I, tell all the members in my group, I tell all the members in my community, and it spreads like wildfire. So actually the digital fluency bit is, I don't think so worrisome, at least from our perspective, because it's not just about literacy. As the more you use it, the more you become fluent, and the more value you see in it, the more you become fluent. And our women, they already have their Facebook pages. Many of them, there are many women on e-marketing platforms using WhatsApp Business, etc. So I think it doesn't stop at literacy. At least once you engage with the kind of literacy programs and the access to capital has to go together. Yeah.
That's helpful. Joby and Jashidan?
Yeah, so I see a bit of the digital fluency and kind of the way forward is um, even buying a smartphone is a good business investment for a lot of women now. So I'm seriously thinking about, like, we do a lot of other kind of consumer goods kind of to the rural women, and their kind of interest used to be buying a TV, fridge, and grinder and all of those things. But I think in this environment, it may make a lot more sense now to kind of really own a smartphone, and then you are up with your business. And I think the way to go, I would see, is kind of a lot of vernacular voice content, because everyone has a phone to reach, and lots of education for people who are illiterate. What we are seeing, we are using this company called Avas Day. They have this ability to kind of really do very customized message in a very, very kind of meaningful manner, understood by illiterate people. So I would kind of, I see the investments would be in the direction of vernacular voice, and biometric will then kind of make them do a lot of transactions. If there are those kind of investments, I'm hoping that a lot of the community investment will go in that direction of building digital infrastructure in the local geography, and they could kind of ride on that if they kind of have the Aadhaar as one tool to kind of make a lot of transactions for them. And once, if they have a smartphone also, like, a lot of this whole education material also can happen. And I'm seeing, as we speak, a lot of the transactions are kind of uh, everything is kind of getting digitized, whether it is the loan contracts becoming e-sign and e-stamping, kind of the whole need to kind of deal with paper, and kind of understanding a lot of this whole loan contracts and stuff like that. And also, I would say those aspects will kind of go through a lot of transformation. But in terms of really having that empowerment aspect of it, how do we make sure women understand what they're signing? Kind of how can we kind of say it's kind of more of an active consent than kind of more of a passive consent on lots of your covenants. To that, kind of maybe the vernacular voice content and your ability to deliver such things. And I would say, like, as Devika was saying, some of this delivery mechanism needs to be a lot more intuitive and very friendly. I don't know the way government thought about the Jandan as a very narrow class. Kind of many may not have the Jandan account, kind of an operative account. There was another effort by the erstwhile government, which was a no-frill account. And one is not sure whether all the no-frill accounts have been kind of converted into PMJDY account. And the all the SFBs and private banks have a very little presence over this whole PMJDY account, and these were very targeted effort during a particular number of months to enroll those PMJDY account, and they all have a product code in the bank's kind of CBS, and they are not then opened, and no bank is kind of really kind of canvassing anybody for PMJDY account, which is kind of, so I wouldn't see that in design, kind of, if the idea was to kind of reach out to all women in distress, there has to be other, I mean, the way that Tamil Nadu government did, I would see it's kind of still very good. And they went about distributing 1,000 rupees, but no digital, nothing, but every ration card, kind of go to the PDS, kind of shop, along with your provisions, you get 1,000 rupees. Yeah, but I think, kind of at points like this, whether corruption or, whatever you were trying to solve earlier versus now, there's an urgency to kind of push a lot more real cash into the, kind of citizens' hands. And they need to kind of really take care of their own daily needs, which is food and, kind of health. I think there it needs to be kind of wherever we can put policy efforts to kind of really reach this into kind of, instead of PMJDY account, everybody has a bank account which is Aadhaar linked. The terminology in the back end of the banks may not be a PMJDY account. It could be just an, kind of bank account opened with Aadhaar link. But I hear from Satish sir that, kind of feedback has gone to the ministry. But I think these are very quick, kind of ways to kind of really get these services to people. Yeah.
Yes. Completely agree on the criticality of making sure that the last mile points are activated, whatever may be the various different layers, to get cash into the hands. And from what I see, from what you and Devika are saying, digital and the financial fluency, there is enough opportunity to build it up at different levels,
Yeah.
and be able to solve for that. So it would be interesting to see what are some of the measures that. Yes, Joby. Yeah.
Yeah, another interesting point, maybe in your question, it was there. Maybe government should see interesting partnerships. Kind of don't try to do everything by yourself. Like, between all microfinance companies in this country, we have a last mile reach into kind of more than 10 crore households. Maybe the number is more put together, both between Sadhan and Yemfin. Kind of sir might know the actual numbers. And these are the households where a field officer is, kind of having the household connection, right? They go up to there and they've been kind of transferring their money to their bank account. So I think government also should kind of try and see good partnerships. These are all ages of partnerships. Like, no, not one person can do everything. Like you can, kind of interestingly kind of bridge a small link there, and then, kind of that's how you kind of, achieve what you really want to kind of deliver. So that could be one. I mean, that's a very powerful network, been working for a long time, and I would see that the policymakers see that as kind of an network in the last mile that they can tap into.
Got it. Yes. Jayashriban, you had a point?
Yeah, I feel that it should be done by government as a campaign, like polio campaign and family planning campaign. So it has to be done on a campaign basis. I'm telling it to you because we have one project now, and that project that project we have to provide digital literacy to 5 lakh women, Seva's women. The amount of money which will be spent on this will be so much, so that I think it will be, of course we have got some funds, but it is not possible really. It is so expensive, and it is not possible that you can, any organization can really do it at a very large stage. So I think that kind of campaign, I think we should put it to the government, that if some funds are given, not funds are given, but it is exactly a campaign that everyone has to learn this. So if this has happened, I don't see that any organization per se would be able to do it.
Understood. Yeah. Okay. So just wanted to, I know that we've spoken a lot about the kind of, the access to the financial products itself, literacy, and taking it to the last mile. I'd love to go over a little bit higher to the design of these products. What are some of these products that you are all planning, or what you think needs to be designed in the post-COVID scenario to be able to help overcome the liquidity crisis, the need for working capital that is available, the need for flexible payments based on how markets are opening up and how they're opening up for women, and also taking into account how women have always accessed these, or what is the kind of designs that have served them. Would love to hear from all of you, what are the kind of financial services or products that we need to be building or designing post-COVID, particularly for women?
One thing is that immediately once the lockdown is completely lifted and people are able to start their livelihood related activities, either it may be household enterprise or it may be some other small business or other service and all. The immediate requirement is of any type of cash. So in our sector, a lot of MFIs have already decided that once the normal operations resume, at least immediate requirements about 10 to 15,000 of to a thousand of emergency loan is something which everyone has thought that that's something which we will immediately give to all our existing clients, so that they will get on their feet and start their operations. And along with that, probably some element of consumption related loan also has to be there, because a consumption smoothening also has to happen along with resumption of their economic activity. So it need not be such a loan with a lot of specific design features, but it should be a flexible loan with the borrower should be able to use the way they want to use in a immediate and an emergency situation. That's one thing which has to be immediately taken up. And another thing which entire microfinance sector everyone should look at is that trying to get on board some health insurance product for all their borrowers immediately, because now the whatever is their credit or the loan that is linked with an insurance policy, but the coverage of health insurance is very less. So that's one thing which I think either in link up with an insurance agency or with mutuals like Vimo Seva and others. This is some product which I feel that entire
Hello?
microfinance sector has to give
Yes.
it to their clients.
I'm sorry.
Got it. No, interesting. Devika
Oh,
and
okay.
Joby,
Yes,
what are the kind of
yes.
financial products that you are planning for your, for the women borrowers, and what is important to build to bring back the livelihood means?
Yeah, so over our survey, what we heard is kind of we were asking, our own customers as to kind of how do they kind of think about reopening and what would be kind of their requirements in small amounts and things. So we don't see all businesses will open up the same way. Certain businesses, so that's no kind of simple single solution for all. Certain businesses, this is the right time to invest, kind of, so they have good opportunities kind of really coming up, which are kind of the whole essential, kind of goods stores, which were kind of, it's a good time to kind of really expand, and there will be kind of more business for them in terms of kind of buying more inventory, digitizing. Lots of the shops were able to kind of take orders on WhatsApp and then delivering in that nearby households and things like that, because households who don't want to kind of come and then be in the queue and things like that. And also they manage, kind of, so there I see is kind of some investments, good investments, and, it really helped. A lot of the women were, kind of asking instead of an emergency sort of loan, like, kind of, because we were on the consumer goods also, a little bit of consumption related, if they can get a, kind of a 3-month provisions, so where the whole pack has been designed in such a way that many of them are able to kind of get certain things from the local government PDS system. So maybe rice, certain amount comes and certain things, but for their 3 month, because their own estimation of their own livelihood kicking back and coming to normalcy to kind of getting to the normal consumption mode may take time. But during that period, if they can, kind of get for 3 months no headache, and then food is served at home, so that's, kind of something that we are thinking about, kind of, which may cost, kind of maybe 2 or 3 thousand rupees, but then it takes care of the basic food requirement of all the households. And most of them, it's kind of, kind of, as sir was saying, it's kind of a simple emergency loan requirement because of the investments lost in during this period, because businesses were shut for, kind of 2 3 2 months. and in order to revive, some goods have been lost and it's been kind of not good to kind of sell. So I would say it's kind of kind of those are the areas. And clearly, as a company which is in kind of rural areas, we see sort of an emerging trend of supply chain linked financing emerging. So we may not be able to kind of now underwrite a lot of kind of single risk, but then we know that now if a person has a cow and with kind of linking up with the dairy, it's almost a lot more easier for to kind of finance such kind of purchases. Lots of these whole FPOs, like the farmer producer organizations, would be the right organizations, can help now the whole input kind of purchases. And so there is kind of, I would say that's one another area opening up, is kind of more of supply chain linked kind of financing we are seeing as in kind of a product, because without which individual farmer may fail to kind of sell his produce, or kind of able to revive his agricultural activity. Yeah.
Makes sense. Devika, would also like to have you touch upon, are there specific terms that we also need for the gig entrepreneurs, gig workers among women? I mean, the beauty parlor kind of enterprises that women have been running, do they need anything customized as well? Like Joby is talking about the agriculture sector. You're on mute.
Very similar to what Mr. Satish and Joby are talking about in terms of like immediate top-up loans. But here also we're going to the bank and the foundation is really, actually Mandeshi's model is really not just access to finance, but really a holistic approach. So here the bank and the foundation will work very closely together, and like Joby is talking about the supply chains, so they're developing those supply chains, working very closely on asset creation. So if women have certain savings, and also offering them top-up loans for like gold and liquidity like that in the future, adding that to their credit. It's really, I think, the combination of the bank and the foundation here that is going to help develop the product. As I was saying, we've done these we're in the process of doing very intensive surveys of 4,000 households. So that will also guide our strategy, but very much about looking, of course, top-up loans, of course, like with existing customers, in places where our bank actually doesn't exist. Our bank is in 8 branches, but our foundation functions in many more. Thinking of providing some revolving grant funds, which are like low interest or no interest loans, which help women at least start their businesses, very small investments in machinery, in raw materials, etc. So basically to just kickstart this whole process and help them create assets. But again, it's really around, like with the foundation, working out the whole supply chain and supporting people all through that chain. So yeah.
Finance linked with the market linkages to make sure that circle works. Got it. Jayshree Ben, from a Seva Bank point of view, what are some of the things that you're planning post-COVID to help rebuild the livelihoods?
See, a majority of the microfinance organizations are giving loans on, even if it is for working capital, it's kind of term loan that you give a lump sum amount and then every month you pay the installment. So, but what we have been seeing is that if you look at the working capital businesses, they do need cash credit kind of loan, so that that one kind of one amount is fixed with looking at the business cycle and others, and then they can withdraw, and they can withdraw as well as deposit. So that's kind of a cash credit loan which we have been giving, but we will be giving it to more and more women, this cash credit loan. Second thing is that we have also seen that once they have one loan of cash credit for working capital, but they also want to buy some equipment or assets. So in that case, the second loan will also be given for this. And so these are the 2 loans which we have been seeing. Daily loan, maybe we will be also be able to do, particularly for vegetable vendors and others. So daily we can give that loan, and so depending upon their need, we will definitely look at their cash flow, and based on that cash flow, we'll try to link with that cash flow.
And just to add, I think it requires a fair amount of investment on our parts to really understand and to support women at this time to understand what is the best loan that they should be taking, what is the best way to rebuild the business. So it's very much an investment, like a wealth management perspective, a longer term wealth management perspective. So I think there's a lot of investment that we're all going to make in that.
Got it. So what you're saying is couple the product with the advisory for the women on how they can look at rebuilding the businesses in the industry that they are in. So that makes a lot of sense. We've got a question on a softer aspect that we touched upon very very lightly in the beginning. Post-COVID, we've also seen that the gender-based violence has been on the increase because with emotional health that being fragile and so on among communities, that has manifested itself in an increase in gender-based violence. Would love to understand from your experiences if you see women who are financially empowered and are empowered through their livelihoods be in a better place to combat such violence. And what else can we do to ensure that this is not the side effect? I mean, pre-COVID, I know we were talking about gender-based violence being almost certain in places where women were being economically empowered and were, sort of playing into the whole head of the household space. And that was, in some sense, a negative manifestation of women's economic empowerment. How do you see, with the increase of gender-based violence reports across the country at lockdown and post-COVID probably worsening, does financial empowerment, livelihood empowerment play a role in combating that?
Can I go?
Yes, Jovi.
Yeah. So for our experience was the opposite, because generally in the lower income group, women were actually exposed to a lot of violence earlier, where the men, when they had access to money, they were on boozing. There was access to alcohol was very, very kind of common. But thanks to the whole lockdown, those were closed down, and so women were generally having a lot of peace.
Singularly in Tamil Nadu, that seemed to have been a reported case, right? Like, no, that's.
Yeah, I think many states, this whole alcohol distribution was kind of really banned, and villages, this was kind of quite common. Kind of when they go for the work for the whole day, and then evenings are kind of very, very difficult. But they seek kind of more peace during this period. But I also read what you're reading in the whole mainstream media, maybe in the other places, when people have to stay together for longer time. I think this whole violence seems to kind of really have gone up.
Right. Any other thoughts there?
Well, actually, I was just going to support what Joby said, because that we have also found to be the case that when the liquor shops were open for those few days, the violence increased. And, because they were trying to take the money for the alcohol. So very much in support of what Joby is saying. I mean, I think it's very hard to talk about just look at just gender-based violence in terms of how empowered a woman might be. Just when she starts earning money, does it automatically translate into less violence? I think that it's more or less a sense of well-being that one really looks at, and what are the strategies that she can employ to reduce the various violences that exist in her life, and not just I would say a domestic violence. And what are the support structures that are created in women's collectives that kind of help her reduce that violence. I mean, there have been women who have said that, now that I'm earning some money, I can at least give him a small portion every time, and he can go and get his alcohol, and he goes to sleep quietly, and he doesn't bother me anymore. So, I mean, there's so many different strategies and responses to this. I think this is such a complicated issue that I don't think that necessarily just financial, empowerment is going to address something like this.
Fair enough. That would make sense. Jayashree Ben, any thoughts? Satish sir, any thoughts from your side here?
Not about this COVID thing, but generally what we have seen is that decades ago also, when women were when both were very poor, and there were lots of violence in the home. But when slowly, when they started getting, more income, better, particularly these women are getting, their savings and their some assets and a bigger home. I mean, sometimes also smaller home also, and there are more violence is happening. So in that case, which we have seen is that yes, whenever a woman has become stronger, particularly financially as well as other way, that violence is going down. Here, of course, we are dry state, so this liquor is not the kind of issue, but normally which we have seen.
Got it.
Yeah, even of course, I can't specifically tell with regard to the post-COVID like situation, but various studies we have seen over time in the both in the SSG model as well as the MFI model and all, some level of economic empowerment of the women creates a greater space for the women in the household, and that has contributed to the reduction in the violence. We can't say that it has completely been eliminated, but because there are a lot of other social and other issues also are there. But here in the present situation, I'm not really sure whether because at least in the households of the microfinance borrowers, there has been a slight level of what we can say halt in the flow of cash, and there are a lot of economic difficulties. That if that could have led to some level of more violence against domestic violence with women, I think the possibility of that we can't rule out. But we don't have hard evidence and all from the field.
Got it. Absolutely. I think we've gone through about an hour and 45 minutes of really good discussion, so many different insights and points of view. Would love to wrap up with one area that I'd like to have all of your inputs. How do you see the scenario for financial inclusion and women, financial agency and women changing? What are the top one or two areas that where you see change occurring due to COVID? And what are one of those? What would you say are one or two of top priorities to tackle to preserve and consolidate and expand gender and financial agency in the post-COVID time? Satish sir, maybe we start with you.
For first thing, the COVID has brought out the fact that there is a need for organizations and institutions which are working closely with women at the grassroots level, and this re-emphasize the importance of that. And along with that, what we immediately require is that strengthening and expanding the what we can say the network and base of such institutions, and that would require all these things will not happen without funding, as Jay Srivan was mentioning. Then that I would require a lot of policy support and financial support from the government and the development finance institutions like NABARD, SIDBI, Mudra, and all. And I would say that the second level funders like these such institutions have to be more flexible and more liberal to institutions which are catering to the women at the grassroots level, especially in the remoter areas and more inaccessible areas.
Thank you, Satish sir. Devika?
Well, for me, I think that the emphasis has to be on supporting women to continue earning their incomes and to continue their businesses and to continue their livelihoods. And for that, I feel like, that is ensuring that they have liquidity, whether it's in term loans, whether it's in credit lines, whether it's in emergency loans, and then and really providing that financial counseling to help them figure out what kind of loan product that they require. I think also that it's important to set some targets, because if we just have this generalized, access to credit, then women can get lost in this. And I think that it's very important to set some targets. Right now, I know that all individual credit, women get only 7 or 8% of all individual credits. So that number is just too low. And we have to set better targets. So whether lending to women, own businesses, lending to businesses that put their wives or their partners onto their as owners, as co-owners, building their assets. I think there has to be some targeting here as well.
Thanks, Devika. That's interesting. Joby?
Yeah, so I would see kind of a very increased emphasis on the, kind of digital, kind of front. This was kind of a more of a mindset change which has already happened. Like even in a kind of in city apartments where I stay, a lot of them used to kind of go to buy things in the shops. Now, most of them, whether they are old, new, will not be in the habits of kind of buying on online, and kind of have picked up this habit now to kind of order everything there. And I think that's kind of going to be a habit. And so, for the business, like all physical paper and cash is a cost driver. And if we are able to kind of remove paper and cash in the process, I'm hoping that should drive the cost down for lots of financial deliveries to the last mile. And I'm seeing increasingly your ability to remove intermediaries in the business. Like, I mean, so our own business was kind of disintermediating the financial services to the poor, but the market intermediation was still very heavy. So therefore, the products and services they were, kind of giving into the market had layers of intermediation. So if we kind of invest and emphasize on the digital efforts, a lot more supply chains will become more straighter, and kind of a lot more opportunity for the real producers to kind of get a larger pie of the consumer price. So I would see lots of focus on those areas in the coming days in terms of designing products and having, kind of that higher importance in the organization thinking and strategies.
Thank you. Thank you, Joby. Jayashri Ben?
This 50 days, and during these days, I'm talking about women. Women must have seen sometimes maybe their children will be starving, or maybe they might be starving. So in this situation, I think they will understand value of money, because we have seen often, women have been spending a lot for wasteful expenditure also. So hopefully, this will help them to understand value of money. And anyway, they have basic instinct to save. So we feel that there will be more and more saving, or at least they will be spending less. The second thing is what you also said is that digital. I think they will understand importance of digital platforms. So they will be trying to use this. So this is an opportunity for us also to both motivate them to save and motivate them to be more digital.
Got it. So I think we've navigated so many different areas. One, we've said a lot of the future is going to be very hyper local, and therefore what does that even mean from financial access to financial services being percolated to collectives coming together to market linkages, and how do we repurpose, innovate across all of these at a very micro level to solve for gender and financial inclusion has been one big area that we've had insights on. Two is digital fluency and financial fluency, and looking at what are some of the, considering that uptake is not of things that are simple and things that are value are seeing a lot of increase. How do we ensure that we tackle the right strategies, look at vernacular content, look at simpler means, smartphone in the family, various other means to ensure that digital fluency and financial fluency is built. How do we layer financial products with that business advisory that comes on top of it? These were the next set of areas. 3, all of these are efforts from a civil society and NBFCs and the entire layer of financial institutions that can be solved for. But all of the entitlements from the government coming in through the PMJDY and several other schemes layer has to solve for the last mile transactional failures, transactional friction that women often encounter. And we've had quite a few insights there. We've also had quite a few interesting perspectives on at a micro level, how many things are being repurposed, how women are rallying around and women are being able to rise up to some of the livelihood opportunities that are being unlocked post-COVID. Also talked about the financial empowerment and gender-based violence perhaps decreasing in the light of alcohol and other things not being distractions, not being around, but also in the end emphasizing the nature of financial products that need to be built and delivered with a gender lens for women to be able to resume their profession, strengthening and expanding the base of networks of institutions such as NABARD, looking at supporting women in and setting targets for women to be able to rebuild back their livelihoods, and emphasizing on the digital front, which is probably has been a pre-COVID effort as well, but how can it really be amped up in the light of COVID? And then looking at how do we perhaps bring down the costs of transaction, bring down the costs of reaching financial inclusion to women with the opportunity provided by digital is another thing that to look at. So quite a few set of insights and interesting interconnections that have emerged. At Satwa, we will definitely crystallize these into a short document that you can share back with all of you post the meeting so that it is able to reach wider, and really looking forward to further comments and any other insights that may be coming from the set of audiences that have joined us now, and will also be seeing it on multicast as it goes later. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. With that, I pass it over to Angad, who will be giving us a small intro into the next session, so that it at Charcha, so that we can go right into it for the audience who have joined us here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a lovely set of panelists. Over to you, Angad.
No, thank you so much, Aarti, and thank you all 4 of you for so many really important insights. And like Aarti said, we'll definitely work on crystallizing it into a document and sharing it. So what I'll be introducing is actually the next session from the financial inclusion track at Charcha, which is actually tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. From 10 to 12 tomorrow. The next panel will be on, quite fittingly, actually, accelerating innovations and pathways for inclusive digital finance. And that one is, so it'll be a panel discussion looking to understand how digital finance can be expanded in a post-COVID scenario, looking at practical and collaborative models to approach inclusive digital finance. And that panel will have, again, actually 4 panelists from L&T Finance, CIIE, the Digital Empowerment Foundation, and it'll be moderated by the co-founder and CEO at Satva, Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy. So yeah, if it is an area that interests you, please definitely tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. And once again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a really great conversation.
Thank you all, and
Thank you.
good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.